Hey there! This is going to be a detailed comparison between these three premium variable ND filters. We have the Polar Pro Peter McKinnon Model 2, the Moment, and the NiSi Tru Color. These are all 2 to 5 stop variable NDs. Well, actually the NiSi is a 1 to 5, but pretty similar. And we'll get into more of that later because we're going to be talking about not only the physical things, what comes with them, how they work, but also image quality, light transmission, pricing, value, and recommendations. We'll start off with the Polar Pro Peter McKinnon version 2 filter. And I have owned the version 1 for an extended period of time. I actually prefer the version 1 over the version 2, but I don't think you get the version 1 anymore. And that thing lived on my camera for a long time. I did invest in that early because I knew it was important to have a good ND filter. And I don't use it anymore just because I scratched it. Now, the version 2, as I said, I prefer the style of the version 1 better, but this is the version 2. It comes in this really clever design, which I understand what they're going for, but I think personally I just don't like it that much. The idea here is that you are keeping your fingers off it as much as possible, but I always have to get in there and blow it off or clean it or anything. So what you do to put it on is you unscrew the back cap like this. And here's the back of the filter. This will screw on your camera, and then you pull this, this rubber cap off. What I found though is the rubber cap is kind of hard to pull off. It does stay on really good, and it shakes the camera quite a bit and stuff, and I don't know, it takes quite a bit of force. So I understand what they were doing with this design, but personally, it's not my favorite. The other thing that I have to mention about this filter is that it has hard stops. If I can get it out, you can see how hard it is to get this out of here. Is that it has hard stops between the different ND stops. So it has a hard stop at 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know. I actually don't like this. It does feel very sticky and very tactile when you get it into those slots. But when I'm doing video, I want it to be smooth changing from 2 to 5 because sometimes the camera's rolling and I just want to be able to make a slight adjustment to the exposure. And this is very jarring and will shake the camera. So I don't know why. They're starting to put this on more ND filter, variable ND filters, and I don't like the hard stops, but again, this is what it comes with, so that's what you have to deal with. This is the version 1. This is actually the 6 to 9 stop one, and just to show you what this looks like, I don't know why I'm showing you this, but very simple design, very strong, simple case, and then this is a big rubber lid or cap that goes on it. This actually really preferred, I don't know. I like this design a lot better, but that's just my personal preference. All right, on to the next one, which is gonna be the Moment filter. And this is actually the filter I've been using for the past, I don't know, year or so. I really do like it. I think it has good value, but we'll get into pricing and stuff later. Has a very simple case here. And when you open it up, there's a couple things that are different about the ND filter here. And the first of which is that the place where you grab the filter and make adjustments is actually sticks out further than where you screw it on. And I actually love this design because it keeps your fingers further away from the actual glass and it gives you a really nice place to grab it. There's also the markings on here for you to see how many stops of ND, and you can actually see it from the outside when you're just looking at the end of the lens. So very clever design. I like this a lot. And the other neat thing about this is that your normal cap that comes off of your lens fits on here. So there's no special cap, which I love not having extra stuff because you took the lens cap off the lens, you put the ND filter on and you still have the cap. That's what goes on here. And when you're shooting, that cap is very easy to pocket. So you take that off, very easy to work. Case is great, very simple. Moment ND filter. Lastly, we have the NiSi, and this one I just sort of recently got. And it comes with a bunch of stuff. So simple hard case. I think the Moment one is nicer. It comes with this hard plastic cap and this super nice pouch, which I never use, but it's very cool. And then the thing that makes it a little bit different is that where you actually adjust the ND filter is recessed. So as opposed to the Moment where it sticks out and the Polar Pro is kind of flush, this one is recessed. And so what they do is they provide you with this little thing here, which screws in somewhere. If I could find it. And once you screw this in, you can operate it with this little handle here, which is super cool. I tend to not leave this on here because it's just another thing to bump and get dragged on something, but it does do this sort of same thing with the moment and keeping your fingers further away from the glass, which I like, and it does give you really accurate and precise movement on the ND filter. This one does not have hard stops, which I love, as I mentioned. The moment does not have hard stops as well, although I think their new version does, not sure though. So big points for me for ones that don't have the hard stops, but in terms of the tactileness, I like how the moment sticks out. It's really easy to grab and it uses the normal cap. But those are the differences between what you get and how they work. Now, onto the image quality tests. For all these tests, I used the Sony a7 IV with the 16-35 G Master set at 24 millimeters. I picked a pretty sunny day. There were very few clouds in the sky, and I went out kind of midday. The lighting was very even and consistent and allowed me to get these tests and have basically the same light for all the different filters. For all these, I had the white balance set at the sunny setting. I had it set with no picture profile, and the reason for this is I wanted the images straight out of camera. I did not do any color correction or any exposure adjustments. This is literally what came out of the camera. I had the ISO set to 100, which is the base for no picture profile, shutter speed at 1/50, and I adjusted the aperture to give me the proper exposure. I started off by having no filter on the lens whatsoever, and for that I had an aperture of f20 to get the proper exposure. So because these are 2 to 5 stop ND filters, or roughly 2 to 5, what I had to do then was when I put it on at the minimum setting of 2 stops, I had to adjust 2 stops in the camera. So for the minimum tests at 2 stops, I have it set at f10, and for the maximum ND, I had it set at f3.5, which is 5 stops down from f20. For these tests, I didn't find it to be a huge difference between all of them. I think more of the difference comes later when you look at the maximum, when you get up to the 5 stops. Now for all these tests, you can pause it and go back, look at the images, look at the waveforms, all that stuff, so you guys can really go through and look and make your own judgments. But for me, what I realized here at this minimum of 2 stops, the moment filter, sort of like the reds and the blues were a little bit darker, and you can see that in the sky. I think the Polar Pro was similar to the moment. The reds and blues were still darker. But the NiSi, I think, looked the most accurate in terms of colors. But what I noticed was the sky was uneven lighting, and you get darker areas and lighter areas. So if you look at the sky, on the right-hand part of the sky, it looks to match the no filter almost perfectly, but the left-hand part of the sky, it's a little bit lighter. So now let's look at the 5 stops. Now for this, it gets a little bit more interesting. I think the moment looks pretty good. There's more green and there's less blue, and there is some uneven lighting in the sky, but it's not as bad as the NiSi. The Polar Pro, more red and less blue. It looks kind of muddy, kind of brown. I think it's definitely the worst image out of the 3, and there's also some uneven lighting in the sky too, but it's a little bit more inconsistent in terms of the uneven lighting sections. The NiSi, I think, is the closest in terms of color. If you look at the sky, I think is the easiest way to tell that. But again, there's that uneven lighting. You can see on the left-hand side of the image, it's way brighter. And in the original image without the filter, it's like very even and very consistent. So overall here, I'd probably say that the NiSi has the closest colors, but the sky being different colors kind of throws me off too. So it's kind of like which one you like better, I think, between the moment and the NiSi. Now, let's look at light transmission. The moment and the Polar Pro are listed as 2 to 5 stop variable NDs, and the NiSi is listed as a 1 to 5 stop. So I wanted to kind of get a judgment of how the light transmission was between these three filters. So because I had the exposure set the same on the camera, I can then look at the images and the waveforms and decide if it's more or less than 2 stops or, more or less than 5 stops. So starting at the minimum, what I noticed here is the moment was like a bit more than 2 stops, meaning it was a little bit darker. The Polar Pro was a little bit less than 2 stops, meaning it was a little bit lighter. And the NiSi was way less than 2 stops, probably about 1 1/3. I don't think it was quite down to 1. And now looking at the maximum setting, I would say that the moment was pretty spot on with 5 stops. The Polar Pro was less than 5 stops, and the NiSi was a bit more than 5 stops. So overall, I would say the moment is probably about 2 1/3 to 5. The Polar Pro is about 1 2/3 to 4 2/3. And the NiSi, I would probably estimate to be about 1 1/3 to 5 1/3 stops. Now let's get into pricing and recommendations. These are all 82mm filter threads, and I like to get 82mm filter threads because my largest lens is 82mm, and then I just use step-up rings for any lenses that have a smaller diameter. The Polar Pro is $250. The moment is $170, and the NiSi is $219. Given the fact that, in my opinion, the Polar Pro had the worst image quality out of the three, it's the most expensive, and I really don't like the way it operates and feels, I can't recommend this filter out of these three. So now it comes down to the moment and the NiSi. And I think this is kind of a toss-up, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. First of all, in terms of price, I think the moment wins, obviously, at $170 versus $219. If you have to buy a bunch of filters, it can add up pretty quickly, but I always recommend you get the best possible filter because that's going in front of your lens, and you can always change the image a lot by putting anything in front of the lens, so you want the best possible glass that you're putting in front of your lens. That in mind, in terms of image quality, as I said, I think it's kind of a toss-up. I think that the moment has a more even light distribution across the frame, but I think the NiSi colors are a little bit more accurate. So it depends on what you care more about. For me, I think it's a little bit easier to make a slight color correction because I'm color grading anyways. So for me, I'd probably lean towards using the moment just because it has more even light distribution, but the NiSi colors are more accurate. And I don't know, I'll probably use this more often, but I'm not kicking this to the curb yet. So I think they both offer a lot in terms of image quality. In terms of light transmission, the moment is less flexible because I estimate it to be about 2 1/3 to 5 stops versus the NiSi has a wider range of 1 1/3 to 5 1/3. So again, a little bit of a difference there. So hopefully it was helpful for you guys if you're looking at these filters. Remember, invest in good quality filters. It makes a huge difference because whenever you put something in front of your lens, you can really change the image, good or bad, and you got to keep that in mind. Hopefully you found this helpful, and if you did, please consider hitting subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.